review other writers, and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already hit that like and subscribe button, go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the last day of Mental Health Awareness Week. Isn't that lovely how time flies? And I said it before, awareness is kind of already mostly a thing, so maybe we can move on to like acceptance or like helpfulness. I don't know. That sounds like the direction we need to go. Anyways, with us today to finish off the week, we have Tyler Kania. Hello, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about who Tyler is.
Sure. Um, I play rugby. I at one point had ambitions to play at the highest level, but I've ruptured both of my patellar tendons. That's when your knee goes into your quad. It's
Oh
really rare. It
no.
happens once for every 147,000 human years. So to do it twice, it's kind of like got the odds
Aren't
of
you
discovering life on other
special?
planets.
Oh, you're so
Yeah.
special.
Um, Besides rugby, I've been a college rugby coach. I've sold cybersecurity, started a cryptocurrency company, and I'm bipolar, and I've survived two suicide attempts and tons of mania and institutionalization.
Wow. Okay, so we're gonna get to so many things, but
Hmm.
I'm still stuck on how you were just so lucky to not just have it done once but twice. Like I'm just in
Hmm.
shock about it. So I don't really know anybody who plays rugby. So first I want to ask you, it looks very vicious.
Um, I played football for a long time before that, and football is definitely more vicious. You have
Okay.
weapons in your equipment, your helmet and your shoulder pads. And, football is a game of inches, so you're trying to knock the guy backwards. Whereas in rugby, um, it's a game of possession, so you just
Oh.
want to tackle him. And, the tackling in rugby is a lot more focused on like taking out the below the knees and stuff like that, as opposed to football where you're kind of going up high. Um,
Oh.
but some positions are more dangerous than others. My position is the fly half, which is a lot like quarterback in football. I call the
Okay.
plays, I do the passing and the kicking. So it's a little less dangerous, but obviously I've had my two knee injuries that would say otherwise.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Well, oh, all right. All right. Interesting. Just absorbing it all. Okay, so you talked about having bipolar, lots of mania, suicide attempts. You know what? Start your story wherever makes the most sense for you, and I'm just gonna jump in.
Okay, yeah, it is a long story. I've had quite the roller coaster of a life, but when I grew up wealthy, like my parents were wealthy, white, nuclear educated family, but went to school for high school in, a city that was dubbed Heroin Town, USA by 60 Minutes.
Oh,
It
where's
was
that?
Willimantic, Connecticut.
Huh. All right.
Yeah, so, it's a lot different than what I knew growing up. There were, more Spanish speakers than English speakers. We had a daycare for the children of the students,
Oh.
and it's the lowest ranked high school in the state of Connecticut. But honestly, I think that I learned more from my experience there than most people learn at, say, a really, big time prep school or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I learned about other cultures, I learned about, people that had less than I had and people that were immigrants. And um, I might not have had the college placement, resources that other schools have, but it definitely impacted me, in a good way for the rest of my life.
Oh, good.
Um, yeah. From there, I went to college at Central Connecticut State and I played rugby. Our rugby team was really good. We won three championships. And,
Wow.
I had been recruited to play on a premier rugby team alongside like Team USA stars and people from around the world from national teams like Fiji. And I had big time ambitions for the sport, but like I mentioned before, I ruptured my patellar tendon at the age of 24. I went manic because of that for the first time ever, and
Okay.
quit my job in cybersecurity where I was making six figures, was broken up with, quit rugby, and moved to Idaho, and kind of just adventured across the West for several months.
So I'm super geographically inept. How far is Idaho from Connecticut?
Oh, a long ways.
Okay.
Idaho borders Colorado to the east and Oregon to the west.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm really bad with geography, not to mention I'm Canadian, so I'm really, really bad with American geography. So
No problem.
okay, keep going.
But yeah, I got to see the West. My friends were building a canoe that they would one day travel from Montana to the Gulf of Mexico through the Missouri River. So I
Wow.
helped them a bit on that. Did a lot of traveling. Almost died in the Grand Canyon, and then moved back to Connecticut and got a job at a cybersecurity startup. And I was making a quarter million at the age of 26. I lived on a big farm with like an indoor pool and a volleyball court with lights, and
Oh my
the barn was like
gosh.
Noah's Ark. And people would keep their horses in the barn. And so one of these people robbed us over a dozen times, like threatened us with guns, and then we got stuck in the middle of this big domestic violence dispute between him and his girlfriend.
Oh my goodness.
Basically, he stole her phones, her cell phone, her wallet, her keys, her car, and her horses. And she was afraid he was going to do something to the horses.
Oh.
So I moved to Boston, and I did really well, in my vocation, but personally, like that's when things started to get bad for me. Like I had extreme paranoia. I would think that my Amazon Echo was listening to my business conversations.
Hmm.
When my car was stolen, I thought it was the Boston Mafia and they're out to get me. And one time I spilled like Sprite on the floor and I went across the street to the 7-Eleven. And instead of buying paper towels, I bought 12 copies of the Boston Globe for like $35 to clean up the spill. Um, my
Did it
substance.
did it at least work? Did the spill at
Oh, it
least get
worked.
cleaned? Okay, you
Yeah.
know.
But
Sometimes you have to make light of very serious situations. That's
yeah.
what we do here.
But my substance abuse habits had spiraled out of control, so I was kind of
Okay,
like,
so hold on. When, because you hadn't told us when you started substance abuse. We heard about like you went into a mania, but when did you start using?
college.
Okay.
Yeah. So I moved back home to Connecticut. I kind of knew that I needed to figure out what was going on with my brain. And then, COVID hit and I quit my job that I was making so much money at and, spent the next year reading 300 pages of literature a day, morning to night, infinite jest in a week and a half.
Hmm.
Um, and at the end of that year, I was pretty distraught. Like I had been reading to escape my world and go to other people's worlds, really.
Hmm.
I had disassociated myself from everything, just stayed in my room, cell phone off. And eventually, I was ready to commit suicide and I put a noose around my neck. And, I looked outside, the clouds parted, the sun came out, and I realized that my good friend was getting married the next day. And I couldn't ruin that for him. So I went to the wedding, and you know, it's amazing the little things that people do for you when you're struggling that mean a lot. Like someone getting you a drink or something at the wedding. But I was still pretty depressed, and I I get invited to a rugby party the next week, a birthday party for an old teammate of mine. And when I said that I stopped playing rugby, I mean that like I cut out my rugby friends out of my life, and
Hmm.
I just didn't want to be reminded of the sport. Um, and I didn't want them to see me in the way I was. Like, I was coming off a suicide attempt, hadn't worked in a year, and I had been like their captain with like endless confidence and stuff like that. But I ended up going to the party, and they invited me to their exhibition match the following week. And they tell me that, our old college coach is now the men's team coach for the Hartford Wanderers. And so I was
Okay.
like, all right, I'll come watch. And I show up in jeans and I just want to watch and not talk to anybody. But my coach's wife was there, and she had been like such this source of confidence in college. And she was like, Tyler, you got to get back out there. You got to get back out there. And I don't really know how it happened, but like with 10 minutes left, an injury occurred, and I went into the game for the first time in 4.5 years. I borrowed someone's cleats and everything, and the first time I touched the ball, I assisted the game-winning score. So, it's a crazy dichotomy from a couple of weeks with the noose around your neck to,
Yeah.
having all these people pat you on the back and stuff. And so I got back into
And
rugby.
did anyone know that you had
No,
attempted?
absolutely not.
Yeah, I figured that was going to be the answer because I find it so interesting, and this is super common, but I find it so interesting when somebody has a suicide attempt or suicide ideation. And you said it already, it's the small things, and people don't even realize it. Like you said, getting somebody a drink, but even like just when you were talking about the clouds parting and seeing the sun, thinking, oh, I can't ruin my friend's wedding tomorrow. Like those little things that people don't even realize have such a big impact on when we're depressed or when we're feeling certain ways. And then having your friends say, hey, come on out. Again, they don't even realize that you were in the lowest of low, and they're just like, hey, you're my friend. I want you to be there. Come.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting dynamic when you look at it through a different lens of how low somebody was and other people just being there, just being
Yeah, and
there.
some of these coincidences, I I didn't believe in a God before, but and you'll find out when I continue my story
Hmm.
that there's got to be divine intervention involved to some degree.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I got back into rugby, and I was training hard, and I still had the skills that I had left behind. And a week before the first game, I got hurt again, and you know serendipitously, talk about coincidence. The very next day, the head coaching position opened up for the Eastern Connecticut State University women's rugby team, which was 8 minutes from my house.
Oh.
Um, and I got the job. And, I hadn't really had meaningful human connection in half a decade at this point. And so now I was tasked with, creating this community for 30 college women that was inclusive and, victorious, competitive, and yeah, I found that I was a natural at it, to be honest. Like, the girls took to me pretty quickly. I took to them. They weren't going to be able to have a season if I didn't step in the week before their first game
Hmm.
and pulled two all nighters to get all my accreditations in order. Um, there was a lot of different stuff I had to pass to be a college rugby coach.
Hmm.
But I worked hard, and, I planned all the practices really well. Like, had a big whiteboard where we would talk strategy and watch film, and
Hmm.
we weren't an instant success. We lost to Tufts University 31-0, and Tufts had beaten everybody in the conference by a score of like 131-7.
Oh my goodness. So they were really good.
Yeah, but after that game, we studied their film, and I just obsessed over it, and we ended up playing them again in the conference championship, and you know, we were confident because we were so prepared, and we beat them 29-10. And, all of a sudden I'm this like successful college rugby coach, mentor. Um, it had been a long ways since, 6 months earlier.
Hmm.
And, the girls wanted to keep playing, which is what a coach wants to hear. So I had been doing well in cryptocurrency, and I sold some of my tokens, and I bought them $3,000 worth of balls and equipment and books and tournament fees for a tournament in New York City at the end of November. And so we trained for that, and had a great time. We had a award dinner, and I paint in my free time, and I painted each girl like an award, different
Aw.
funny things and stuff like that. Um, and it was a really great community. But the off season came, and I tried to start this cryptocurrency company. It was basically a decentrally owned and operated rugby team that was governed through NFTs, where people, who had certain rugby accreditations could have, you know, a vote as far as like who makes a lineup or who makes a roster,
Mm.
to try and like not make it a dictatorship with the head coach.
Yeah.
And I get invited to the largest cryptocurrency conference in North America, and I go there and I'm pitching it to like venture capitalists and technologists and even Elon Musk's brother Kimball. And I went manic while I was out there, and Maniac can be a good tool for like having a 2-minute conversation with a venture
Mm-hmm.
capitalist in a bar. So I did well, and I was getting these grandiose thoughts because of the mania. I was thinking I was about to change the world and get a 7-figure investment. I had gotten a lot of phone numbers and stuff like that. So I went back home, and when you're manic, you don't have a sense of risk. You just have a goal in mind, and you're just gonna do whatever you can to achieve that goal. And so I trusted this guy online with the secret phrase to my cryptocurrency wallet, and he stole $450,000 from me in 15 minutes.
Yep.
And I was pretty distraught. My my parents were away, and I just started drinking. And the next day, I had to coach the women's rugby team, and they brought 3 new players, and I was out of my socks, insane. Like, I was distraught from losing all my money, and I was manic, and I was disorganized and disoriented, and yelling at them for the first time ever. And I guess my behavior was pretty appalling to some of the girls. But what I
Yeah.
didn't know at the time was that their old head coach, who had abandoned them for a better job, was trying to form a coup to get his job back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I get called to a meeting with the leadership of the team, and there's 4 girls there, and 3 out of them just berate me for an hour straight, don't give me an opportunity to talk. And I was really confused because I had honestly saved their season. They wouldn't have had it without me, and they won the
Mm-hmm.
championship. And so I texted a girl. I said, and this was really unfair to put a girl in that position, but I said, look, I don't know what I'm gonna do if I lose this job. I might commit suicide. And so the next day, the university launched an investigation into me, and I quit before I could get fired. There really wasn't any real rule that I had broken.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But like you
I just
said, you shouldn't have put somebody in that kind of position.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And it was clear that I had lost the support of the team. So I quit, and the next 6 weeks I was just like suicidally depressed. Like, I'd walk my dog and see illusions of myself hanging from trees, and I pretty much didn't really leave my room and kept roping it, and then that that depression gave way to a manic episode, and I figured, well, my friends are. If they find out that I got fired, that I lost this job, it's going to be pretty embarrassing. So, I got to find a new rugby coaching job. And so I just got in my car and drove south. Stopped in Nashville for a week and played rugby with my old college roommate. And that was a really good experience. It was kind of what I needed in that moment. But while I was there, I found a job opportunity in Memphis, coaching U19 rugby in the most dangerous neighborhood in America, Orange Mound, where like if you're stopping for gas, you need a gun.
Oh, dang. Okay, so I'm not going there. Got it.
Memphis is a beautiful place. There's a lot of cool stuff there, but um, it's poverty stricken, and the history with civil rights, Martin Luther King getting murdered, and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. They've still got a long way to go. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but so I moved down there, and I'm thinking that this is a nice step out of my comfort zone. I'm going to be able to mentor these kids who are surrounded by gang violence, and um, I was positive about it. But on my fourth day there, I had this tremendous panic attack, and I just started taking like dozens and dozens of pills. Um, by this time, I had been cycling through um, like a dozen medications over the last year, and one of those medications was an early stage antipsychotic that made me gay for 3 months, and that was
Oh,
really traumatizing.
yeah.
Um,
So,
but
question for you. Um, had you been to the like, you must have been to the doctor because said you were cycling through medications. So how, like, what were they saying?
um, yeah, I first started going to the psychologist and psychiatrist um, the previous year after I attempted suicide. But they diagnosed me with depressive disorder, and so they were mostly just giving me like SSRIs and
Mm-hmm.
anti-anxiety stuff.
Yep, very
Um,
common.
yeah, none of it was really working. So, anyways, I was having the panic attack, and I took over 40 pills, um, and I started to sweat, and I thought that the best idea would be to drive 1,700 miles back to Connecticut. But I didn't make it that far. I was overdosing, and so I got flown home and spent 3 nights in the hospital getting treated for severe serotonin syndrome.
Yeah.
And then I was pretty lost for a while. You know, um, no one would hire me, so my best friend, who runs a stonemasonry business, had me work for him, and he didn't really care that I couldn't follow his directions, or he didn't care that like he was losing money on projects. Like, he was going to pay me anyways.
He
um,
wanted to help.
he wanted to help.
Good.
And it was you know really, I was really fortunate to have a friend like that.
Mm-hmm.
um, but it wasn't getting any better, and so my psychiatrist gave me some coaching, and I went to the ER, and I just said, look, all I want to do is kill myself. I've tried before. I'm going to try again. Like, can you help me?
Mm-hmm.
And so they stick me in, this wing, which is for like mental health, but like it was mostly homeless people and addicts, and a lot of unruly people, and like it's this big hall, and I had a bed with a curtain around it, but since I was suicidal, they wouldn't let me close the curtain, which was really inconvenient. Um,
Yeah.
but after a few days, a spot opened up for me at the Institute of Living, one of the oldest mental hospitals in the country, which was across the
Okay.
street. And, it had beautiful, like, it looked like an old college campus, like grassy acres with oak trees and beautiful old buildings. But,
Oh.
when you're an inpatient, you don't get to see the outside. You're just kept in this
Yes.
one wing.
Yeah.
And, so my first day, I meet with all these doctors, and they tell me I'm bipolar 1, and they prescribe me lithium, which is a mood stabilizer, which has saved my life.
Yeah, much
And
better than an SSRI for sure.
yeah, yeah. And, you're losing your freedom when you get institutionalized. No one really talks, they're too traumatized.
Mm-hmm.
There's no group activities. Um, there's, we had a TV, but it was small, and the only one who was controlling the remote was the one Spanish speaker in the room. And so we'd have like 30 people watching TV, and only one understood it. Um,
You mean you didn't learn Spanish in that time?
no, no. But, I did witness a lot of people that were suffering, schizophrenics, narcissists who required, being tied down to administer medication. My roommate had aphasia, which is when a trauma prevents you from talking very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I got him to talk for the first time in several weeks.
Aw.
and we formed a friendship, and it's a lonely place, so
Mhm.
that friendship meant a lot to me. And I kind of looked around, and I realized a lot of these people are suffering worse than I am. And I was reminded of my blessings being from a wealthy, white, educated family, like having athletic ability and an innate sense of confidence. And most of these people were ashamed of who they are, and they just didn't have opportunities to succeed in life. And
Mhm.
I wanted to do something about it, but I didn't know how. So eventually, I get transferred to outpatient therapy. Same campus, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and it was a really liberating feeling. I got to see the campus. I got to have sugar and coffee again, and I went to group therapy, which was really helpful. People that were willing to talk about their trauma and um, offered good things to say about what I've been through. And I got out and I got my life back together. I got a job at the largest cybersecurity company in the world, and I was working really hard to get back on the rugby field. By spring of 2024, I was in the best shape of my life. I was thinking it was finally going to be my opportunity to show the world what I could do on the rugby field. But the
Mhm.
first play of my second game, it happened again. I ruptured my patellar tendon. It's a traumatic injury because your knees in your quad and your legs just dangling. So I knew
Oh.
exactly what happened as soon as it happened, and it just felt so unfair. But of course, when you're bipolar and you're dealt with trauma, you tend to go manic, and so that happened for the first time since I had been institutionalized since Memphis, really. Um, and I when you're manic, there's some good things about it, and it gives you courage, and it allows you to think a million miles per hour. You feel like you're God. You just don't care what anyone thinks. And
Mhm.
so I just started opening up the notes app on my iPhone and typing my life story and publishing it on Instagram. And
Okay.
I had to get hospitalized for that manic episode. I hadn't slept in 3 days, 3 nights.
Ooh.
And, my first nurse had never dealt with mania before, so I was treated quite poorly, and she locked me in a room for 3 hours, shitting and pissing myself. Um, but then someone stuck me with fentanyl, and I went to sleep, and I woke up, and my friend's mom was my nurse in the morning, and that was a really comforting thing to wake up to.
Yeah.
So I get out and I check my phone, and I realize that I have all this support, all these messages from friends and rugby players and strangers, saying how inspired they are by my story, saying how they had no idea what I had been going through.
Mhm.
You know, um, I had kind of part of me wanted to put it out there because over the past decade I had confused so many people in my life, and I wanted them to finally understand. But once I got that encouragement, I said I got to sit down and I got to write a book. I published the first draft directly to Instagram, and I built this pretty strong community. But the week I finished the first draft, I got fired from my job at the largest cybersecurity
Mm.
company in the world because when I was manic, I had forwarded an email with partner pricing to a customer, which is against the
Oh.
rules.
Mhm.
But it turned out to be a blessing in disguise because it allowed me to spend the next 8 months, focusing on putting my book out there. And
Mhm.
so, it worked out.
Oh my goodness, that is a lot of ups and downs and turnarounds. Which you totally said was gonna happen.
Hmm.
Um, so what is a strategy that you've learned to use when you are starting to feel either, well, both. I want an answer for both. A depressive episode or a manic episode coming on.
Yeah, with depression, anyways, my antipsychotic medication is kind of fluctuating. So, like on good days, I take, you know, 2.5 milligrams. But if I'm really depressed, I'll take 10 milligrams. And
Okay.
that seems to set me straight. It's important to get yourself out there and, take pride in your community and have goals and, hang out with friends. Those things are really important. But, having something to focus on is really great for me. I went through, even after the story I just finished, I went through the most horrific trauma of my life while I was writing the book. But, the book kept me focused. And, I don't know where I would have been if I didn't have that, to think about and work on.
Hmm. Yeah. I find, I mean, for sure, writing is one of the most popular coping strategies. And sometimes we use it when we don't even realize that we're coping. We just
Mm.
start writing like you had done before. You just wanted to share, you just needed it out there. And then, oh, it turns out that it's actually proven to be super helpful. How convenient is
Yeah,
that?
definitely.
That's amazing. So you seem like you're doing well now.
Um, I'm doing well. Like I'm stable and like I, have hopes for my writing career and
Hmm.
still have hopes for my rugby career. But I have a lifelong illness and I still struggle every day with it. I still struggle with substance abuse. I'm not suicidal, but I have suicidal thoughts every day.
Hmm.
It's not something I'm ruminating on, but it's there and it's not going to go away. So, this book has connected me with a lot of people with mental illness, and they look up to me. They see me on podcasts like this or TV or the fact that I published a book, and they think that I reached the other end of it. And what I tell them is there is no other end. Things can
Hmm.
get better, definitely. You can be stable. You
Yeah.
can live a life that you're proud of, but you're still going to have to overcome your illness.
Yeah, I love that. And I like that you're able to share that you came from, a wealthy family, good off, because mental illness has absolutely no cares about what your family is, how much money you have, what color your skin is, whatever. Mental illness doesn't care. It will affect everyone across the globe, every age, everything. And so I think it's really important to note that is that, everybody can suffer from it. And so it's not a that group over there, like anybody can, and you just never know who is dealing with it, right? And um when you're talking about your story and your rugby friends or at your work, and yeah, okay, you might have been fired from this and lost that, but they didn't know. And obviously when you make a breach of stuff at work, you're going to be fired, but they don't know what's happening and they can't accommodate for things
Mm.
or give any kind of helpful feedback. Like if the situation was a little bit different, if it wasn't one of those things where it's like, "Ooh, you made a big boo boo." But it's important to note that everybody everywhere, and we just don't know. So don't look at somebody and be like, "Oh, you're just a crazy person. I'm not talking to you,"
Mm.
because you just don't know. Actually, speaking of that, guys, slightly off topic but slightly on topic, and I should really get a picture, but brand new merch dropped this week for Mental Health Awareness Week. I took one of my brother's drawings that he named Figgy. Um, so, for those who maybe have not tuned in before, my brother died by a drug overdose. We're coming up on 4 years. We're coming up on 4 years now. So the only thing left of him, I think we had like 6, 7 pictures left, and that was literally all that was worth salvaging in his room because everything else was pretty much garbage or used needles, unfortunately. But a brand new shirt merch just dropped with that little picture, it's a little squirrel, and it says, "You don't know what's behind this smile." And that's
Mm.
exactly what we're talking about. You do not know what is going on with somebody. You just don't. Um, so I always like to ask everyone a different sort of question, but it's all kind of in the same realm. What would you say to somebody who is going through kind of these ups and downs, but they have no idea what it means? Like they've never been diagnosed with something, but they are feeling really, fantastic most of the time, and then sometimes they're not so fantastic. But what would you say to that person?
Yeah. Um, my book is kind of about like running from your troubles in your mind and going on these adventures to think that a new environment might change things. Um, but some problems are going to stick with you like a shadow, and they're going to follow you everywhere you go. Um, so, I'm sorry, what was the question?
What piece
It's
of
the lithium. Lithium makes your short-term memory bad.
all good. What piece of wisdom would you give to somebody who has experienced a lot of mania? They don't know that it's
Yeah.
mania, but they're experiencing it. And you from the outside can be like, hmm.
Yeah, yeah, that's where I was going with this. I was running from my trouble, like thinking that all these things might help, but eventually it came to a head where like I had no choice but to get help. And then once I got it, it was like, well, what took so long? Like, why did you resist this for so long? Um, and so, I just say like, go try therapy, go try talking to a psychiatrist, um, talk to a friend. But, the first step is knowing that you can't just do it yourself.
I love that. And that goes across for anybody. I mean, I know I asked the question of give the piece of wisdom to somebody who's maybe experiencing some mania, but that piece of wisdom works for anything. Why the heck did it take me so long before I went to therapy? Because life would have been a heck of a lot easier had I
Mm.
went like at least 5 years earlier, at least, if not more. Um, so that's fantastic. Now, before we move on to talking about your book a little bit, um, is there anything else that you want to share on this topic?
I'm good.
Perfect. Um, and because I was telling you about the new merch, guys, I went and I got a picture, so I'm going to show it, and then we're going to talk about your book. So let me see if I can do this because I've never shared my screen on Riverside yet, and it's really not. I want to press that button and press that button. Okay, hold on. Ah, I'm trying, guys. Stay with me. Bear with me a hot second. Where did it go? Let's see. Let's see if I can do this. Is it working?
No. Oh, there you go.
Yes, it's working. So here's the new shirt I was talking about. Um, it's got so the little squirrel girl here. That is my brother Brandon. One of his designs, like I said. And it's you don't know what's behind the smile. So I just thought that was very fitting for Mental Health Awareness Week. I'm like, wow, I have not released a new merch in so long. I think I only have maybe two more pictures that I can release of his stuff, and then I might have to like make my own stuff. But if you haven't checked out our merch store since I'm on here, give it a check. This is Brandon. They're all him. That one's mine. I drew the cat. And this one's my kid. My kid drew this. You notice how very few of them I did because I'm not an artist. But there's some cool stuff, but that's the brand new one, and I love it. It just fits this week and life so well. All right, back to our regularly scheduled show. How do I stop share? Stop share. Haha, look at that. I did it. Woo! Okay, so tell us, what is the name of your book?
The Maniac with No Knees.
Okay, say it one more time slower.
The Maniac with No Knees.
Okay, I did hear it right, but I just wasn't 100% sure. I like that. The maniac with no knees. And I just keep picturing after you described the injury, keep picturing it. It sounds really gross. And I kind of want to look it up to see if what I'm picturing is what it looks like. But then if it's more gross than what I'm picturing, then I'm like, oh, maybe not. You've already kind of shared about it, but tell us a little bit more about it.
The injury?
No, sorry, your book.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's a memoir about my life story. Everything I mentioned is in there, but there's a lot of other stuff, right? Like I went
Mm-hmm.
on a lot of adventures. It's kind of like Jack Kerouac's On the Road in some ways, like just these mania-filled adventures across the country, and risking your life doing stupid stuff, and um, so yeah, there's not a dull page in the book, to be honest.
Excellent. And where do people pick up their copy?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. That's the easiest place to get it. There's an audiobook and an ebook as well, so
Love audio.
give you the option.
Did you do the audio or did you get somebody else to?
No, I hired someone else. I tried to do it, but I realized that I'm a mouth breather, and it
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
working out too well.
I get that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you want it to sound good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I love when authors read their own books, but I definitely have heard somewhere I'm like, "Oh, you should have got somebody else."
Mm, yeah.
So sometimes that is the best choice. Awesome. So yeah, everybody be sure to go and pick it up. Maniac without knee.
The
Wait,
maniac with no knees.
with no knees. There it is. The
Yeah.
Maniac with no knees. It's so catchy, but it's a lot of words. And like you said, that memory thing. I don't have lithium, but I just have a memory issue. Um, where do people follow you?
Um, yeah, like, all of my new stuff, writing wise, is first published to Instagram still. I've built a strong community, and, after writing the first book, I started writing short stories, like micro stories, one
Oh,
page long each.
nice.
And, I'm turning into a book called 99 Stories in a Broken Pen.
Oh, I
And,
love that. You got some good titles.
yeah, so, I'm figuring it out. Like every single day, I publish one or two stories to my Instagram. The handle is at Tyler_Kania. So yeah, give it a follow.
Love that. Oh, so thank you so much, Tyler, for coming on the show. I super appreciate it. And you finished off Mental Health Awareness Week beautifully.
Hmm. Thank you.
Uh, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in or listening. We always appreciate that because we have a lot of really important things to share. And the more you listen, the more it's going to get shared. And, you click the share button and that's shared some more. And I wonder how many times I can say the word share in one sentence because we can share stuff. See? Sometimes I get on weird tangents. It's all right. Be sure to tune in on Tuesday will be our next episode, so be sure to tune in then. Check out the merch store. Like I said, there's some cool stuff. Obviously, you saw it if you're watching. If you're listening, go check it out because there's some cool stuff there. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly.